Hey, this is Tom Jacobs from tdjacobs.com. I'm an evolutionary astrologer and a channel and an energy worker. And at tdjacobs.com, there are tons of tools for you to employ whatever stage you are in your opening evolutionary process: astrology, channeling, energy work, meditation MP3s, all kinds of stuff, about 16 books, lots of stuff, including 2 natal reports. One of them is the Chiron Natal Report, and I'll be talking about Chiron today in this video. This is number 2 in a series of videos about Chiron, and the first one is an overview of how I understand the myth and the archetype and where I get my information and how I use Chiron. I understand Chiron as archetypally as the energy antenna within a person. If Mercury is perception, communication, processing information, gathering information, learning, all of that bit, then Chiron is the energy antenna, makes us sensitive to energy in the world around us, and we experience energy, we often feel emotion, so there's a link. I'm going to talk about that today in this video. This is about energy management and kind of leads into the issue of energetic boundaries, emotional boundaries. So this kind of builds on what I said in that first video, so go find that video, and I'm organizing them into a playlist, so it'll be easier for you to find it. This is a really big topic. I talked in that video about Chiron being the energy antenna, the energy sensitizer to emotion and energy. But essentially, this Chiron teaching I'm offering has to do with helping you understand what it means to be an energetic being, to be consciousness. We have this relationship informed by our brains and egos, where brains and egos say they are the best. They appoint themselves, like I like to say, dictators for life. And then we believe that's who we are because they're constantly telling us their control mandate is who we are. And if things go well, then we should like ourselves. If we were able to control these 5 details, then everything's fine. If not, we should be anxious or whatever. The brain and the mind and the ego, they fear death. So they don't want to give up control, but here we are, humans. We need to learn how to live in harmony with life, and that's a lot of what our spiritual paths have to do with, is figuring out how to not shame and vilify ego, but how to detach a little bit, understand what it is, what it's for, what it's really doing, and how we can use it in better ways. So the energy sensitizer, the energy antenna of Chiron, makes us more aware of information our egos can't control and our egos don't want to have to deal with. This is very important to remember. When you get sensitive to the Chiron energy within you and also within other people, and you whether you use it in astrology charts or not, when you understand what I'm talking about, and a lot of you do, you will be able to hear the vibration of somebody talking who was only talking from his or her head or throat. I sometimes have to turn off podcast or fast forward through it when the host is doing a thing and introducing the guest. The guest comes on and the guest talks like this: "Thanks for having me on your show. I'm really happy to be here." The energy in the voice is like constricted. It's up in the throat. It's a mental egoic energy. Not to put them down, because they're all over radio and podcasts and entertainment. But just to say, you recognize the frequency of when someone is heart-centered and when somebody is brain-centered. So that's just one thing to be aware of. You realize it. Now, many of you coming across this information, this video, will already have that experience where you just can't connect with somebody, or you just couldn't pay attention to that teacher when you were young in school, or this kind of information, it doesn't reach you, it doesn't fit. And there's a thing where if you're feeling energy and you're sensitive to energy, you're picking up on multiple information sources. Again, your brain, your ego cannot control this and doesn't want to have to deal with it. So energetic subtext is part of the Chironic experience. Somebody says, "I'm fine," but you can see that there's almost a tear in the eye. You can see, you're sensing the energy, you're tuned in that way. So that is a primary way that Chiron as an energy antenna functions within us day to day. So the end goal of my Chiron teaching is for you to be open-hearted and compassionate. But there's a huge but here, a huge B-U-T, and it is that you must have energetic boundaries. You must choose what frequencies you're going to engage with and what you're open to. So how I teach this has a lot to do, and my coaching clients hear this quite a lot, my students, groundedness, connected to the earth, being in the body, not only being in the mind, focused in the eyes and the mouth and the, constant talking and learning and evaluating everything with the judging eye, but being in the body and being in the heart. Then you can open your heart when you're grounded, and it can tell you about the world around you. If your heart opens, you relax, you feel warmth, you feel happiness, you feel peacefulness. If it closes, you don't. You feel cut off. You feel distant. You feel uninterested, not wanting to connect. You're inadvertently, constantly in your life, picking up on the frequencies that either work for you or don't work for you. And your heart is opening and closing. So Chiron, being conscious of Chiron and using it intentionally, involves being open-hearted so we can use it as a tool to sense the world around us. Compassion is part of the Chironic process, remember, but being clear that you're not going to engage with certain frequencies that you know are unhealthy for you or really don't work for you. So there's a lot of muddiness and swampiness and your foot getting stuck in tar as you're walking by and on the road. There's a lot of wet cement. There's a lot of like hiccups and speed bumps and things to trip over along the way of learning this, because you are involved with people in your life about whom you care and who care about you, who run energies that you can't deal with. It's part of being human. You can't curate everybody in your life to vibrate in a way that never makes you close down. So the other thing about Chiron, I'm talking about energetic subtext, what somebody's saying and thinking and doing is one level, and what's really going on underneath is another level. So with Chiron awareness, which a lot of you are going to have already, and I'm just putting words to it in a way that might be new, but I know a lot of you understand what I'm talking about, where you can feel what the other person can't see is happening within him or her. So what do you do? What do you do when that person, in your heart, in your bones, that person needs to go through a painful experience that he or she is experiencing? You shouldn't help, but you feel that person's pain. Well, what do? That's what I want to get into in an overview kind of way today. This grounded idea, being in your body, choosing that your body, your mind, your space, your heart, your energy is your own. In a compassionate, grateful way, choosing to clear out others' energies that don't belong to you and calling back the energies that you've loaned out to them that do belong to you. This is a basic energy management technique. And if you're saying, oh my God, Tom Jacobs, I need that, I do have a pre-recorded, it's a 40-page channel PDF that's in modules, and then channel meditations go with it, called the Release Course, on my Healing Courses page, which is a lot about this cleanup of energy. Because just as a side note, or as an aside, I'll just whisper it over here for you. This idea of cutting cords, it's violent. It's energetically inappropriate. It doesn't honor that the souls are connected in what I call the conspiracy of love between souls to push each other into fear and pain so we can, as individuals, empower ourselves through becoming loving and accepting and compassionate. So cutting cords, you will have noticed if you've done it, it doesn't really work most of the time. You can have an illusion of power. You can have the perception that, yes, I made this firm decision, but what we really want to do is, with gratitude, give and take back. So that's what the Release Course is all about. And it's about forgiveness across time of self and other as well. It's extremely powerful. And that's a good tool for learning energy management techniques to clear the space. Because the chironic sensitivity within you may be covered over with a bunch of energetic emotional data of your loved ones. People you want to be around, but their stuff will affect you. So again, in the body, clear, grounded to the earth, willing to open your heart, but clear, you're not absorbing everything that's around you. And this is where we get into needing to heal the childhood chironic wound, the Chiron wound. As I mentioned in video 1, the mythology of Chiron that says the story we receive, and a lot of astrologers are working within this construct of the story, this context, is that Chiron is inadvertently wounded by a poisoned weapon, and he can't die because he's immortal, but he can't heal himself. He tries everything he knows. He's resourceful. He's a healer. And he eventually works out this deal to give up his immortality in exchange for freeing Prometheus from his penance, his suffering. And then Chiron is finally allowed to die, and oh my God, the suffering can end. Well, if we believe that suffering can't be healed and we can't heal ourselves, then when we feel somebody else's energies, we're not going to think we can move through it or get around it, right? So this whole thing about our inner Chironic infant can be triggered. And I talk about that at length in the first video. But also we're going to be affected by the actual content of what others are feeling and their pain and their suffering. Also, as I mentioned in video 1, joy is contagious, just like suffering. Your Chiron will pick up on happiness as well as unhappiness, but happiness doesn't feel toxic, and somebody else's pain and grief might. So when you process your own childhood wounding about being worthy of love, essentially, then you have compassion for yourself, absolutely, for the ways that you are unique, for the ways that you might be hypersensitive to how others react to you, thereby assuming if you do this thing or are this way, house sign and aspect in your chart of Chiron, then you will be rejected, because that's what happened when you were very, very young. So if you're assuming you're going to be rejected, you're going to have a tenuous, difficult, painful relationship with others' pain and suffering. If you haven't dealt with your own rejection fantasy, is one way to call it. So when you do, when you bring absolute compassion to yourself, then you can respond to other people or not respond to them, but you're not nearly as triggered. You won't want to shut your heart down because somebody else is grieving or angry or any other intense emotion that's something we don't want to have to deal with every day. Anything, rage, anger, sorrow, bitterness, self-pity, whining, whatever it is, just kind of neediness, whatever that is, you won't respond to it the same way because you have absolute compassion for the part of you that gets triggered by others' emotions. So this Chironic arc is about opening heart. And I want you to realize, even if you're not closing your heart because of other people's pain and emotions and fear and their frequencies, you're living in a world where most people try to. So this compassion teaching is about the evolution of humanity, which happens person by person. Like I said, when I asked in the other video, when I asked Jehudi what will happen in 2012, he says, here's a heart-opening Chiron teaching about learning how to deal with your emotions so you can manage your energies and emotions in more effective, conscious ways. He calls it becoming a conscious operator of yourself as an energetic being. I love that. A conscious operator of yourself as an energetic being. And that is not controlling emotions, but it is understanding how to deal with them, how to work with them. I do intense coaching work with people from all over the world on this kind of stuff all the time. So if you want to learn more about this, I encourage you to check out the Chiron course and the book and the Natal Report. And, but also keep in mind, I do focused work on this kind of stuff. And I also do readings for people around the Chiron return, which is around age 50. Sometimes people request that I go in depth into their Chiron placement. At the return, which means that Chiron's orbit's right around 50 years, makes a full circle of your chart, right? Around age 50, you are infused, your Chironic inner woundedness, also your resourcefulness and your uniqueness, but your fear of rejection and your sensitivity to energy and emotion may be exacerbated because it's being infused by transiting Chiron, pouring sensitivity into it. A lot of people I work with regarding the Chiron return find themselves super sensitive, and they're not quite sure why. They're around age 50, they're fully functioning adults, many of them have families of their own, and have are raising kids and animals and have relationships and jobs, and they're successful people who like themselves, but suddenly they are crying a lot, and sad stories make them cry and make them sad, and they're realizing they need to spend a lot more time alone, and they're realizing their best friend, I just need to take a month off and I don't know what's going on, and it's because the doorway to the sensitivity is open. So at any time your Chiron can be activated by transit or progression, and also your natal chart can be activated by the transits of Chiron, but also around the return, around age 50, it's a unique opportunity to open up to make contact with that part of you. So one of the things with Chiron to work with that's very important is this idea of energetic boundaries. What can I do? What should I do? What is appropriate and healthy for me to do with and for others? And what isn't healthy and appropriate? And when you are, again, fully in your body and your heart is open, you evaluate every situation on a case-by-case basis. Can I help here? Should I help here? And when you are tapped into having compassion for the inner kid, you are less, as I mentioned earlier, less triggered by others' sad stories or the thing they don't know how to deal with, the unprocessed thing, the unrequited love, the feeling of, the parent never loved them, whatever it is that's lingering. You're less triggered by it. You're able to have compassion for it and see that person as a divine being who is creating scenarios to learn through for him or herself. And you become better at discerning, is it appropriate? Is it healthy for me to help this person? Or does this person need to suffer through this in order to become the source of love for him or herself? That's what all humans are doing here, is being challenged to become the source of love for the self. But we cycle through asking 3 questions along the way. What is love? Where does it come from? And who's responsible for giving it to whom? The ultimate answer is we must become the source of love for ourselves. But most of our lives over and over again, many human lives, operate according to those contours of the struggle to figure out who's going to love us. And this Chiron thing starts when we're babies. Are we acceptable? Are we loved? Are we supported? Are we celebrated? Are we welcome? Are we nurtured? Are we paid attention to? Are we validated? Okay, so this energy management bit is in feeling, but not absorbing. Just to kind of recap here. It's in being aware of what's happening around you, including what others are experiencing, but being responsible for your own self, to take care of yourself, not to shield yourself, but to, as an adult, be the adult that your inner kid needs, is essentially the secret to this. I explain that in the Chiron book and also the Chiron report in more detail. But when you're in that space, then you can make those decisions. Is it right for me to do this? And you're not as triggered. So thanks for your time and energy. Again, check out the resources on tdjacobs.com regarding Chiron. And I'll put some links in the description of this video and the other one to all these things I'm mentioning. So take care of yourself and be well.